Hey everybody, welcome to the first official video on the NASCAR Trent YouTube channel. I've had this channel for a while. There may be some videos I've posted from back when I was a little younger. I should be taking those down soon. If not, then either they're meant to stay up or I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But yeah, this is something I've wanted to do for the NASCAR Trent kind of brand for a couple months now, especially before the season started. But with graduating and moving out and starting my job less than a week from now. I just haven't had the time to do so. And so now I'm in a place where I'm about packed up. I'm about ready to move back home, start the job. So now I can devote a little bit of time to this sort of content. But I wanted to go ahead and just kind of give my Coke 600 weekend recap, being there for Saturday and Sunday, just kind of my thoughts, the different things that I observed, and everything that kind of went down for this weekend. Just starting overall as a weekend for the trucks, O'Reillys, and the Cup. The rain postponed the Friday truck event to what was supposed to be Saturday morning. That got postponed to Saturday night. That then got postponed to Sunday morning. And Lane Riggs ended up being the winner. I am pretty happy about that. I'll kind of get into this a little bit later, probably near the end of the video, but just the rain shortening and then the adverse weather timing for stopping it at noon to make way for the Indy 500 on another Fox platform wasn't my favorite thing in the world, but I'm glad they got most of the race in. Um, Same cannot be said for the O'Reilly series. That was 91 of the scheduled 200 laps. That was what I was there for. It was a 3 or 4 hour rain delay between the rain coming down, then pulling the cars onto pit road, and then putting the jet dryers out there and getting the track dried off and just saving the track. So that was ended up being, like I said, I think 91 laps. 37 of those were green flag, and the racing on those 37 green flag laps was incredible. Allgaier looked like he had the win um, very much through the first little green flag stint. He was pulling away from Zillage and the rest of the cars. But as time went on, as the track got more grippy and the night started to fall in, his car was not exactly really a winning car. They didn't make adjustments after the first little rain delay and all that, and the stage and the caution, and so it kind of caught up with him as the track evolved throughout the night. Ross Chastain ended up being the winner of that. They called it for, I believe, a second time after the second stage, brought them all down pit road, and then within 20 minutes called the race, and I was already on my way out of the racetrack at that point because it was, I believe, 12 o'clock. It was about midnight, and I didn't really want to stay there waiting to see if they would try to dry off the track before 1 a.m. I know they don't like to race that late. I would have loved to see the trucks at some point during the day. I think they could have also had the O'Reillys a little earlier to try to avoid some of this rain. I don't know if that would have helped a lot, but the planning that went into this with the rain could have been a little bit better, and I will talk about that more as we get into this video. Yeah, as I stated, the trucks ran into the time conflict with Fox Broadcasting as a whole. For them covering the Indy 500, that is a little more prestigious than a Charlotte trucks race in the middle of May. But I think the trucks are some of the better racing. I honestly think O'Reilly's and trucks have probably better racing overall than the Cup Series kind of week in and week out. You can argue with me about that opinion. But it sucks because that race was going to be so good and they had to call it because of the Indy 500. Even though it wasn't on the exact same channel, it was still in the Fox family and they didn't want to take views away from either. Um, yeah, so a couple more things on that. O'Reilly race obviously was not halfway. It was 9-10 laps short, which they should have completed those 10 laps. I think the cautions that kept coming out and them kind of waiting and just kind of not really being proactive on anything with the rain slightly coming down and the car still out there trying to keep the track from being lost. They could have just run those under green flag. They could have got them back a little quicker than they did just to get in those extra 5 to 10 laps per stage, per caution, in order to complete that halfway mark and make it at least a slight bit more legitimate win. I love Ross. I love Ross Chastain. But winning a race that hasn't been halfway completed and being somehow official, even though I know it was the end of stage two, just doesn't seem real to me. It's probably the most Mickey Mouse win I've seen in a long time. Um, But he won. He still won. The car looked sick. Everything looked cool. He did the bow. He smashed a melon. All of that was awesome. I like how all three race winners ended up doing the rowdy bow. I think it was very cool that everyone paid kind of tribute to him over the weekend. Let's see. What else do I got on here? I believe with that O'Reilly's race not being halfway done, um, they had that spot in between when the Indy 500 was going on. I don't really think O'Reilly's and Indy 500 are two of the biggest competing audiences. I think some people who are diehard race fans would love to watch both, and I think most people who, if they wanted to watch both, probably could have had them both open. So I don't think you're really taking away viewers from that point or from that aspect. I know the O'Reilly's is on CW. I don't know what they had going on Sunday or even Monday. Um, I just think they didn't handle it too well, and it really just ruined the product for me. I was very excited to watch that race, especially in person. I haven't been to one in probably 10, 11 years, and to not see half of the race really kind of sucked for me. Um, but that's about it I have for the lower series. I have a lot more to speak on the Coke 600 itself and just kind of everything that happened there. I was there for that as well. I got tickets for O'Reilly's and Cup, and so I was there both days. I got a couple things. I have a little haul over here. I'll show this one. I went to the Lionel store and picked up a uh, Cheddar's number 8 in his honor. I was surprised they still had some, but because we went on Saturday, not everybody was there for the big race on Sunday, so it was good to pick something up. The winner, obviously, Daniel Suarez. He took the win after they called everybody into the pits for the caution. I knew immediately at that point when they brought him down that the track wasn't going to get saved. It was kind of not pouring, but it was a lot heavier rain than had been the mist of the day 2 days before. Um, so I just got up, I just packed everything and we left. So I was like, congrats Suarez. He took the two tire stop. Strategy played out because they were anticipating rain. They took the two tires to get out there to try to hold off the field until that caution came out, and that's exactly what they did. A couple restarts, and they handled it perfectly. I know people will discredit it because it finished under caution and this and that and whatever, but he held him off for a good couple laps. It's not like they ran a lap and a half and they threw the caution again and brought him down while he still had a little bit of a jump on the field. He really held his own for those couple laps, and it was really cool to see, especially being a Spire, former Kyle Busch Motorsports winner, just taking the checkered flag. It was really cool. It was kind of a poetic way to end the weekend, and one last tribute to Rowdy for the weekend. It was really cool. I just wish they could have done something to make it end under green and finish the whole race. Um, but throughout the race, Hamlin, Reddick, Briscoe, Larson, um, I'm trying to think of others, but those are the four that come to mind. Those top four, basically the entire race until Briscoe crashed. Fantastic racing. Those cars looked so good out front. They were flying just the entire race. Throughout the field, there was fantastic racing. I was listening to Hocevar on my scanners and just watching him throughout the pack. It was insane. Um, but that racing up front was really cool. I'd seen a bunch of clips of that Hamlin where he kind of took the air off the left rear of Reddick and allowed him to pass. That was pretty cool. It's cool how much aerodynamics play into passing in this car. I hate it a lot of the time. But when you have multi-groove racing and things like that on this kind of mile and a half setup, it's beautiful. And that's kind of I go back and forth on it because sometimes it's the most boring racing I've ever seen, and I wish they would go back to the Gen 6 or even before that. Um, but this racing at Charlotte was beautiful. And the aerodynamics of the passing and catching the draft at different points and the tire wear played into it too. It was all really really good. Really solid racing. One of my favorite races of the year. Just wish it got to the end. Um, there were two not necessarily contenders, but in the beginning, Cindric and Zilich got taken out on a very early caution, and that was one of the only two or three cautions for wrecks and contact. I know Catherine Legg lost a tire. That was insane. I remember I looked up and the big screen was showing a tire on the back stretch, and I was like, "What in the world is going on?" Um, but yeah, that was kind of the really big. I know Chastain got hit or later on by Stenhouse, and then Briscoe, I believe, crashed out as well. Elliott crashed out. So there was a couple big names that did not finish this race. But regardless, Kyle Larson, fastest Chevy in the entire field. He was up there with those three or four Toyotas. Ty Gibbs was up there too. Really, really good race for the Toyotas. They look like a powerhouse, and I swear every race I've gone to over the past not even year, it's been Hamlin and Briscoe up at the front week in and week out, and it's getting boring at this point because they're so good. But I'm hoping I don't take it for granted as much as I did that number 18 up in the front week in and week out. Let's see. Oh yeah. So Larson was the top Chevrolet. SVG, very much number two. Started P7, I think, I believe. Finished P11. He ran the top 10 most of the day. I was expecting him to kind of do what happened to Austin Hill and slowly, kind of like a McQueen is fading, kind of like work his way back into a 15 to 20 spot and just kind of chill there for the whole race. But no, he stayed in the top 10, looked very consistent. That car looked beautiful. He's really improving on the ovals, and I know it's not the same as a Zilich or an Austin Hill or somebody younger coming in. He's had decades of V8 supercar experience, so he can adapt a little quicker. But just seeing him go from two very different types of racing and taking his like breaking points and his different ways that he maneuvered those supercars into the road courses and dominating, and then learning how to adjust from that to these ovals, just has been beautiful. And I know he came in kind of as like the road course ringer, and that's why Trackhouse brought him on, and now he's like unironically running the top car of those three week in and week out, which is kind of insane. So big props to SVG for doing all that. I hope he gets a top five, top three on a non-drafting track in the future and just really kind of like stuns everybody. I think that'd be really cool. Maybe a win. If he gets a win on an oval, I'll probably buy the diecast, just because it's really cool. Um, on the flip side, somebody who I didn't think would run that good, who showed exceptional um, kind of promise and just his work ethic in being that way. Um, some other cars didn't perform too well. As I mentioned, Austin Hill. God, I was gonna be so sad seeing that number 8 on the track. But I'm glad they changed it to 33 and let the number 8 kind of be reserved for Brexton when he comes up. I'm praying for that whole family. I just I can't imagine what they're going through, and especially Kurt, being his brother growing up with the kid. Um, it just sucks for everyone there, for JGR, for RCR. It's especially I feel bad for Richard because he's had to basically retire two numbers now, um, within the middle of a season. The first one being Dale, and that number 3, which brought back or was brought back in the future for his grandchild. And you can have mixed opinions on that. I'm not the biggest fan. It's cool seeing the number 3, but it doesn't hold that intimidation factor like it did back in the day. Um, but anyways, I digress. Um, Blaney and Hocevar, two of the worst pit crews out of these top supposed to be contenders in the entire field. I think Blaney may have had a pit issue once or twice this race. I know he did. He's had consistent pit issues this whole year, and it's almost cost him a lot of races. If he almost didn't win Phoenix because of it. He somehow rallied back, and props to Blaney for being able to overcome that adversity. Hocevar, on the other hand, I'm not going to talk too much about it because I'm going to go down a deep rabbit hole, and this video will be a Hocevar pit crew bashing video. But the Jackman on, I believe, his first or second green. At first, he thought he had a tire going down. They came in, they did a pit, so he was already further back in the field. And then I believe it was the next one, the Jackman let the car down before they could get the right rear tightened it on, and so um, that took an extra 15, 20 seconds, and ultimately He ended up 2 laps down. I think he finished a lap down because of the wave around late in the race with all those cautions at the end. He finished P23. Blaney still finished P7. So like I said, props to him. Um, yeah, listening to Hocevar and everything, and just kind of playing out what would happen to, or would have to happen to get him back into the top 15, top 20 on the lead lap. Um, just in general, it just sucked. Stage 2 and 3 were full green flag runs, except for Catherine Legg losing that wheel. And I did check that before just to make sure I was correct, because lap two, or not lap two, stage two, I knew was completely green. I couldn't remember about stage three, but other than that one caution, it was completely good, which allowed for Hamlin and the rest of the leaders. It was just Hamlin and Reddick, really. Um, they lapped over half the field. They got up to 18th, I think, in those 200 laps, which you don't really see that much anymore because stages kind of take that away, especially on the shorter races where the stages are only 50 to 60 laps on a mile and a half. It was really cool because it reminded me of more NASCAR of the old. I think because it's 600 miles, a lot of the traditional NASCAR, kind of what you would think about, and like some people finishing 5 laps down just solely off of race pace, ended up happening. And it was really cool to see that, except for the 77. I was not too happy about that. Um, but it was cool that that kind of took effect and it looked more like a traditional race, uh, just with the stage cautions and everything. Um, so the race came down, ended up being more of a pit strategy race, knowing the rain was going to come in, or thinking it was going to come in and not knowing what time. And then when that last pit stop happened, I believe it was on the border of being able to run the entire rest of the supposedly 600 miles. And so some of the guys came down, some of them waited to take down, or take tires on the next caution that ended up coming out. Suarez took the 2 tires, like I mentioned before, and it ended up really helping him. He got on that front row P1 and just never looked back. And I nothing more to say about that. I could go into in depth on 2 tires, 4 tires, fuel, all that sort of stuff in another video, just kind of more overarching things about NASCAR. So if you want to see that, drop a comment. Maybe like the video. Just let me know that you're enjoying this content so I can see and have the feedback, so I'm not doing something just for no reason. I wanted to say as well, sorry I'm bouncing around here. I just kind of put these thoughts down in the order that I uh, had them pop in my head. But shout out to Zane Smith and William Byron. They finished out, I believe, Byron 9th, Zane Smith 10th. Byron was 2 laps down at one point. He was, I think, the lead car of that 2 lap down pack for a good while, and then he got a lap back, and then he ended up being on the lead lap and making a charge to the front. That was really cool to see. It was very, 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 very quiet top 10 for both of those guys. Um, I think they just showed consistency, able to fight back from a little bit of adversity. I don't remember if Zane Smith went a lap down or not, but he just had quiet little top 10 race. Really cool to see him kind of get in the top 10. He's been very consistent this year. He's done a lot better than previously, and not biggest fan, but got to give him flowers as well. He's been kind of outperforming that front row motorsports equipment that he is in. Um, and then Byron, just a great recovery race. I think it was the second Hendrick car because Bowman didn't do too well and then Chase wrecked out. Um, so unfortunate, but shout out to both of those guys for coming home with a top 10 and ultimately SVG right outside of there. So that's 3 drivers who, given what happened during the race, wouldn't have been expected to be where they finished. And then Blaney a couple spots in front too. But yeah, that's about kind of the race overall. But I have some. I kind of just wrote the ugly on here because I have some really not so nice things. Um, I may have mentioned this. Rain shortened all 3 races. So if you bought tickets to all 3, you did not see one complete race. Granted, the 600 ended up being, I don't know, 550 miles, something around there. So you got more than any other race that you would go to throughout the year. So I mean, that's take that as you will. Um, but if you came to watch 1,100 miles of racing over the course of the weekend and you got under half of that, or not under half, but under half of the trucks and the O'Reillys, and then you got basically 5/6 of the 600. That's not really your money's worth, especially parking and the time it takes and the hotels and all that sort of stuff. They could have taken so much better. They could have taken better measures to ensure that more racing um, was had during this weekend. As far as time, moving things up, moving things around, different days, different times, not being as they were they just they were afraid, in my opinion. I think NASCAR was afraid. The second that any sort of rain was on the radar and a little bit of mist was coming down, or just little raindrops that not even really mist, but just kind of like a very light rain, um, they just threw the caution and they tried to wait it out under caution instead of trying to turn one or two more green flag laps. And I know they have to keep the driver's safety number one priority. I get that. But I just wasn't a fan of how they conducted each race. The O'Reillys being kind of called, they should have called it. I don't think they should have called a winner, but they should have called the race for the night there, and tried to say, like I said, either Sunday or on Monday at some point, just to get the rest of that race in. The trucks, I think the fact that the Indy 500 was on and you're running a truck series race, people watching the 500 aren't watching the truck race. And if they are, you can do, I don't know, most of them are probably at the track. Not all of them, but a good amount of them. And if not, they're probably going to turn anyway. So just at least let the race run its course. Um, it just sucked them being essentially timed out of the rest of their race just because something else was on, and they both happened to be broadcast by Fox. I think Fox is needs to be on the way out. I don't know if it is, but it needs to be on the way out of NASCAR as a whole. Um, it just sucked that those races ended up under caution and um, just barely got to halfway for any of it. It was cool to see at least some of the races, some of the patriotic schemes. I just wish they had a better chance to shine on the track. And then for Cup specifically, but this goes for some of the O'Reillys last on Saturday. I want to say last night, like today's the 600. Um, but these cautions should not take so long. They should not. They should not take 10 laps to do what can happen in 3 laps. I get the cleanup and everything. I think that's the only valid explanation for some of this stuff. But when you look at it, some of these cautions were very drawn out because it may have started to think about raining in turn three or turn one and two. And they're like, we gotta wait it out. We gotta wait it out. And they kept the cars on the track, trying to keep it all as just good as possible to make sure they could run. But they were losing time. They were losing time. They were losing laps because as the rain got closer and they were monitoring that, the worst conditions to start the race again. And it's just something you can't do. You know, you can't just keep waiting around knowing that stuff is getting closer if you're trying to finish a race. And I think Sunday was a big kind of showing of that because there was the thought of rain at some point and they ended up kind of shutting them down. They didn't even take them. I think the lightning there's lightning within 8 miles of the track or something, and they didn't bring them down pit road. They just kind of kept going around to try to save the track instead of taking them down pit road like what everyone thinks was like pretty consistent stuff to follow. Um, it's kind of like a precautionary measure to make sure that everybody is safe and nobody gets struck or just something like that. I don't know. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but you know, they're going around the track at 50 miles an hour. That's a third of maybe 45, maybe could be like a fourth of what they go around normally. So the laps are taking 3 to 4 times as long. So you're not doing anything, especially if the track is still relatively safe. You're losing so many laps just by running those cautions for no reason instead of letting the guys green flag race until um, it gets more apparent that something's going to be a problem. Like I said, I know you got to take the measures to make sure the drivers are safe and everything because that's very important. Um, but it just seems like they were too scared, and it ultimately kind of screwed the entire race, the entire weekend. Um, but some of these cautions, if they didn't do 20 laps around the track for half of these cautions, and especially stage cautions, that can be a whole nother video. Um, Stage cautions should not take that long. And it really comes down to if they just ran them like normal, did one or two, or just didn't have the caution laps count, this race could have been a lot better. That's the caution laps not counting. That could go one way or another. I really don't think they should count at the end of a stage, or you shouldn't have a stage caution at all. Just pay the points at the end of the stage and just keep going green, because that would be able to pay points for different parts of the race. You can still flip the stage if you wanted necessarily. Um, it would just be under green flag. All that sort of stuff would allow for these races to be done quicker, and especially with this weekend being the longest race of the year, you're not going to have an attention span from everybody to watch 6 hours of racing. Um, because it ended up being that way. It's about 6:30 to 11:45 or midnight again, before that race was finally done and called. And it just kind of, I mean, I was on my phone for some of it. I tried not to. I had my scanner on. I had my phone up with the lap times. But the cautions, they're so boring. And thank goodness you have the announcers at the track, because otherwise I would have just stayed on there and not known that the race was getting back underway, because I didn't know when the freaking cars were going to line back up, because half the time they turn the lights off, they do the choose, and then they'd go back under caution the whole weekend. And it's just, there's so much wrong with the caution kind of mandates that NASCAR has in place right now. Um, I think just we saw that mixed with horrible weather conditions for the weekend. It was already somber enough, and then the rain and the overcast, and then just not letting guys run green flag and all that sort of stuff just really made it for not so fun weekend for the spectator especially, but most definitely the drivers as well, who they work all week to run out here. And most of the radio, I was listening to Raja on Saturday for the most part, and most of the guys were kind of saying that, hey, we don't see anything new on the windshield. Why can't we line them up and go back green? And I think um, if it's one or two guys saying that sort of thing, then you know what, they're just itching to get back out there. But if there's multiple, and I don't know how many were, but if that was the case, then you probably need to rethink what you're doing. And so that's kind of my message to end off this video. I just really, really think these cautions need to be reevaluated. Um, Stages as a whole need to be reevaluated. I don't hate the stage concept because it plays more into the playoff or into the chase, because you could have a guy who runs top five the entire race, and then especially at a drafting track gets murdered by a wrong push, like a Bubba Wallace kind of push. Um, and he just goes, he crashes out. And there's no, before the stages there was no way to kind of give credit to that top five performance before getting crashed out. And I think stages for that reason are really good, and they pay consistency, and that's what you need. You need to be rewarded for being consistent throughout the race. Finishing and the points paid out for finishing, obviously the most important, and should be that way. Um, but take last year, Hocevar, his first three stages, he ended up doing well. He ended up on the front row for stage four, Um, I think he finished third in that third stage. Got what 8 points. And then blew a motor. So he got those 8 stage points. I can't remember if he got more for one and two, but he at least got points for that stage for running up near the front, with the guys, with I think Byron and Hamlin, and I think you need that, but I don't think you need a caution every time. Let the guys run their race, pay the points, let them do green flag pit stops. It's especially the top series. They don't need to be kind of babied around. Um, but yeah, I digress. That's a whole nother video. This is 4 times as long as I thought it was going to be, so my apologies. But yeah, thank y'all for tuning in to the inaugural NASCAR Trent YouTube channel video. Hopefully I'll have some more in the future. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.